Welcome to Paranormal Nightshift, your ultimate destination for everything that goes bump in the dark and where your spine-tingling fan stories come to life. Tonight's tale comes from one of our listeners, John, and it's called The Factory. But before we dive into the eerie details, we've got something special for you. Head over to paranormalnightshift.com and claim your free copy of the first ebook in the Dimensional Desperado series, The Birth of Dimensional Desperado. It's packed with thrills, chills, and time-traveling paranormal adventures you won't want to miss. Now dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself as we step into the shadowy corridors of The Factory. I work in high-end manufacturing in Tennessee. It's a job that demands precision, focus, and an unyielding commitment to quality. We don't typically run a night shift, but long hours aren't uncommon. Some folks here are known to pull 16-hour days, and that day was shaping up to be one of them. My boss and I had stayed late, pushing through to finish a critical project. It was around 8 o'clock when my boss looked at his watch, sighed, and said he had to call it a night. "You good to lock up?" he asked as he packed up his things. "Yeah, I've got it," I replied, not thinking much of it. This wasn't the first time I'd stayed late alone, and the building had always felt like a second home. It was quiet after hours, almost soothing in a way, the hum of the machinery and the faint echo of my footsteps filling the cavernous space. As soon as my boss left, the silence deepened. I was in the welding bay, working on a project with the bench grinder. The sparks danced like fireflies as the grinding wheel bit into the metal. Once I was done, I flipped the switch off, waiting for the machine to power down. That's when it happened. The first sign something wasn't right. The grinder, which I had just powered off, sprang back to life. At first, I thought it was a mechanical issue. "Great," I muttered, annoyed. Figuring the switch was faulty, I reached down and unplugged the machine from the outlet. That should have been the end of it. But as I walked back to my station, the unmistakable whir of the grinder fired up again. I froze mid-step. My stomach dropped, a cold weight settling in my chest. The grinder was unplugged. I turned slowly, half expecting to see someone messing with me. But there was no one, just the dim glow of the shop lights casting long shadows across the equipment. My first instinct was to call my boss. Maybe someone else had stayed late and was pulling a prank. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is anyone else here? I think someone's messing around." His answer sent a chill down my spine. "No, man," he said firmly. "I locked up when I left. Nobody should be there." The air around me seemed to thicken. Every sound felt amplified. The faint buzz of the fluorescent lights, the creak of the building settling. My mind raced, searching for a rational explanation. I started walking around the building, checking every corner, every shadowed space, looking for signs of anyone or anything that could explain what was happening. When I returned to the welding bay, the bench grinder roared to life again, the wheels spinning with a menacing hum. My hands shook as I reached to power it off. Before I could touch the machine, I felt it, an overwhelming sense of dread, like I was being watched. My eyes darted to the exit. That's when I saw it. Near the employee parking lot door, a black mass hovered, no bigger than a baseball. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, an inky void that seemed to absorb the light around it. Before I could fully process what I was seeing, it shot across the shop at an impossible speed, disappearing through the exit door. My fight-or-flight response kicked in, and flight won by a mile. I sprinted to the doors, double-checking locks as I went. My hands fumbled with the keys, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. I didn't stop until I was in my car, gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands. Only then did I feel a strange wave of relief wash over me. It was as though the oppressive weight I'd felt inside the building had lifted, leaving me shaky and drenched in sweat despite the mild summer night. The next day, everything made sense, or as much sense as it could in a situation like this. The building was shut down after a natural gas leak was discovered. The leak was bad enough that the entire place had to be aired out for most of the day. One spark could have turned the shop into a death trap. I shared my story with a few co-workers, brushing off their skeptical looks with a nervous laugh. Later, the oldest employee pulled me aside. His face was serious, his tone low. "I've got to tell you something," he said, leaning in as though sharing a dark secret. He told me about the man who had been killed years ago, crushed by a large bench grinder in that very building. The path the black mass had taken, he said, led directly to the spot where the accident happened, right by the employee parking lot door. "You're not the first to see something," he added. "This place has a history." Hearing those words sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't need convincing. I already believed. Whatever I saw that night, whatever force had turned that grinder on and off, I'm convinced it led me to safety. Without it, I might not have made it out alive. And that wraps up tonight's chilling tale, and we want to give a big thank you to John for sharing such an incredible story with us. But before we sign off for the night, we want to remind you how you can support the show and stay connected. By joining our Patreon, you'll unlock an ad-free experience, get to listen to episodes a week early, and gain exclusive access to all future journeys of the Dimensional Desperado ebook series. Don't miss out. Join the adventure today. But if Patreon isn't your thing, no worries. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube. And while you're there, leave us a comment and let us know what you thought about this episode, as we always love hearing from you. Finally, don't forget to visit paranormalnightshift.com to grab your free copy of the first ebook in the Dimensional Desperado series, The Birth of Dimensional Desperado. It's our gift to you for being part of this amazing community. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep your eyes open and your wits sharp. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows.